Hey Most Amazing Top 10 family, I'm your host Jade Arena and welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. The basement is inherently a scary place. It's dark, there's spiders, it's underground, and unless you've put in the work to make a basement pass for an apartment for a struggling art student, it always has the feeling like you're hiding dead bodies down there. So it should be no surprise that I'm bringing you today's list of top 10 scary creatures seen in basements. I'm gonna pick from real life statements and monster encounters in movies, cause that way we have a nice mix of everything creepy. As always, I would love it if you could like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell. Also stick around for the whole video because I'm going to be doing some more pet shoutouts, which you guys love so much. Remember, if you want me to shout out your pet, you can hit me up on Instagram. And if anyone at home is looking for some more Most Amazing Top 10 content, check us out on Instagram and Facebook. We are starting to do Facebook exclusive content. If any of you at home want to grab merch, check the link in the description below. Use the offer code MA10 that will give you $5 off. Without taking any longer, let's get into this list. At number 10, we have It Chapter 1. This scene was in the original trailer for the movie, and it was this clip that really made me go, oh, I gotta see this movie. Let's take a look. The scene combines so many creepy things into one explosive freak show. You have a flooded basement to scare anyone who might have a fear of drowning. Then you have the rotted corpse of Georgie, and of course the horrifying Pennywise vibrating through the water like a rogue washing machine. And of course the basement is just the cherry on top of this whole thing. Like imagine the same scene was happening in a living room or a kitchen, there's like a fireplace going. It just wouldn't be as scary. You need a dark, moldy, wet, creepy basement to really send the horror factor home. Also, once you walk down to the basement, there's only one way out. So if that creepy clown crawls up to the doorway before you do, then you're gonna end up Clown Chow, which is also the name of the Pennywise themed breakfast cereal that I'm going to invent. It'll have marshmallows in it that are shaped like disemboweled kids. At number 9, we have Little Creeps. A girl named Samantha was looking for a place to live in downtown Vancouver. The rent prices were kind of crazy, but she was determined to live downtown, so she kept digging. She came across a basement apartment that was way cheaper than the rest. So cheap, it was a little suspicious, but she still wanted to check it out. And it was beautiful. This only made things more suspicious. She looked into reports about the place. Maybe there was black mold, but nothing came up. She decided that she was just lucky, and then she signed the lease and moved in. For the first month, everything was fine. But then she started to get these strange nightmares. She dreamt of a child laughing and running around her bed. But the dreams progressed, and the child would contort and shift into this horrible shape, like all his bones were breaking, and then his eyes would sink into the back of his head until there were black pits. The creature would move closer and closer to her, and she would always wake up in a cold sweat before it touched her. Then one night, in her horrible nightmare, it got close and it bit into her face. She woke up screaming. She had a sharp pain all over her face. She then looked into the mirror and saw black bite marks on her cheek. It was safe to say that she didn't spend another night there. At number 8, we have Tremors. Tremors was one of my favorite monster movies when I was a kid. It's campy, cheesy, and has all the pieces of a bad movie from the 80s. And I think there's like 8 of these movies. Now, laughable as these movies are now, the Tremor creature I always found super creepy. I mean, look at this thing. These are giant slug-like monsters that can dig underground like moles, and they have thermal vision. And they also have those tentacle things that come out of their mouths, and they are hideous. There was a time in monster movies where they used real props, and they always looked slimy. It was so gross. It was just, ugh, even just thinking about it grosses me out right now. At number 7, we have The Break-In. 2 brothers were home alone late one night, and they heard a crash in the basement. They assumed it might have just been something that fell over, and they figured they'd wait until the morning before they cleaned it up. Then they heard another crash, and it sounded like something was shuffling down there. They lived far into the country, so chances of it being someone breaking in were pretty low. It was most likely an animal. So they decided they would try and trap it and then set it loose. They grabbed a blanket to wrap around it and then a shovel to protect themselves. They walked into the basement expecting to see a raccoon or a possum or something like that, but what they saw was way creepier. They described it as a humanoid body, hairless, with long fingers that were almost like claws. They then looked at them, and then they saw its face. Its skin looked like it was pulled over a skull and had teeth that looked like they were filed down into points. It hissed at them and then crawled out through the basement window. And then it was gone into the night. They could never prove what they saw that night, but they never ever forgot. At number 6 we have The Haunting of Hill House. If you are looking for a solid horror movie series, then you have to check out The Haunting of Hill House. There are so many little scares in this show that when I watched the recap to make this list, I found even more ghost sightings that I had missed from the first time I watched it. And the basement scene is one of the best parts.
Theo!
Yeah, being stuck underground with a crawling mummy coming towards you when you're 10 years old is one of the worst things I could imagine happening in my life. My sister told me there were monsters under my bed when I was a kid, and it messed me up for like years. I feel this kid's pain. At number 5 we have The Cage. A family's grandmother passed away and they were left with her house. Instead of selling it, they decided they would keep it, renovate it, and maybe turn it into a nice summer home. They were gutting out the basement when they found a hidden panel. It moved a wall and revealed a secret staircase. This was strange. Not only did the family think they knew their grandmother very well, but the staircase seemed like it had been used recently. They walked down into a secret room, and down there they found a horror. Chained to the wall was a beast. It looked like it used to be a man but had been experimented on, like someone had sewn in animal parts to the body. It looked like someone had cut off the feet and hands and replaced them with hooves, stitched fur into the back, and the creature was gnawing on a piece of rotted flesh, and then it looked at them and the eyes had actually been plucked out and the holes threaded closed. How long had this thing been down there? At number 4 we have Lights Out. This scene takes place right outside of a basement, so I thought it was perfect, and it's also creepy, so I wanted to include it.
Okay, I'll get her, I promise, come on! Right now!
Just look into that face. The eyes are ripped out of the head. You just see those black pits. It's so gross. And then it reveals the creature standing behind her. I love it. I haven't watched Lights Out in its entirety. It didn't really grab me, but this scene is definitely one of the better parts of the movie. At number 3 we have A Growling Surprise. Now this one isn't supernatural, but trust me, it's just as frightening. You don't have to be a creature from the other side in order to make people freak out. This story comes way of electrician Dave Corin. He was hired to install some cabling in a home in New Jersey. He went down to the basement and was feeding some of the cable through some of the holes he had made. And then he heard a strange noise. It sounded like a large animal growling at him. He picked up his flashlight and shined it through one of the holes that he made to feed cable through, and on the other side of the hole he saw a grizzly. All that was between him and 1,500 pounds of bone-crushing power was a few pieces of plywood. So he did what any sensible human would do, and he ran for his life. At number 2 we have A Quiet Place. Possibly one of the best horror movies in recent years. It's starring Jim from The Office. Who knew we would love him just as much, covered in rags and fighting for his life? If you haven't seen A Quiet Place, then let me give you a quick breakdown. There's these monsters, they're nearly indestructible, they love to eat people, and they use sound to locate their prey. Emily Blunt had just had a baby and it's floating in a flooded basement, and then this happens. The tension is unbelievable in this scene. Everyone watching is like, oh my god, you gotta save the baby, but that baby better not cry. And you can feel anxiety growing inside you. It's terrifying. Just thinking about the scene gives me anxiety. Also, when I saw this movie in theaters, I got nachos as my snack, which is a terrible choice. The whole movie is people being quiet and you just heard me like I had to take a nacho, put it in my mouth, and I would squish it with my mouth instead of chewing them. At number 1 we have A New Home. A family had just purchased a new home and it seemed like it was going to be the starting of a happy new life. But it didn't take long before things started going to hell. There's a husband, wife, and their 2 daughters that moved into the house, and it didn't matter who went into the basement, but they all felt the same strange feeling when they went down there, like something was watching them. The dad figured that the basement just needed to be spruced up a little bit, so he started doing some renovations. Late one night he was working on the basement and he felt something strange. Not the feeling of being watched, but a feeling of terror deep in his stomach. He slowly turned and then he saw it. A tall, shadowy figure. It looked as if its body was made of a black abyss. He tried to scream but he couldn't. He tried to move but he couldn't. He was paralyzed. He stared into the endless darkness of this thing and he saw horrors. His family murdered, his own suicide, torture, mutilation, cannibalism, and then he passed out. He woke up on the floor of the basement and then ran out. His family family was all fine, but that was the last night they would spend in this house. They never went back, and sometimes when the father sleeps, he can see the endless blackness of this creature in his dreams. Alright, that was pretty dark and twisted, but now we're gonna do some pet shoutouts like I promised. Remember, if you want me to shout out your pet, you can hit me up on Instagram. I shout out new pets every day, so if you don't get picked one day, message back another day. And if it takes me a while to get back to you, I am very sorry. I literally have like hundreds of these to do. And without taking any longer, let's shout out some pets. First, we have Ashton's cat Sebastian. This cat is having a great snooze right now, I love it. Next, we have Nikki's cat Hooper. This guy is so fluffy, I love it. Then we have Missy's Python Medusa. What an amazing name for a pet snake, I love it. After that, we have Jaden's dog Diesel and her cat Rocky. They look like good pals, I love it. Shira sent in Frost. She's sleeping just on that nice little pillow there, oh, I love it. And finally, Harry sent in Henry. Look at this little dude and his big floppy good boy, I love that look. His ears are just like all like whoa with all the hair, beautiful. Alright everyone, that is our list. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, I would love it if you could like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell. Until next time, I've been Chaderena, and I guess I'm gonna stay out of basements. I don't know, every time I make a list, there's less things I get to do. Anyways, bye.